Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 53 of the Future of Work show. Now, if you've been following us for the last few weeks, you may notice that we've been focusing on career transitions and what it means for so many of us. And really, the reason behind this is quite simple. Most of us are going to have a second or perhaps a third career. Some of us are going to have several careers at the same time, too. So if you're interested in understanding what these newer career streams are going to look like, how you can possibly make a shift into becoming either an entrepreneur or shifting your function to, say, HR, from HR to marketing or marketing to HR, keep following some of these conversations. We're going to be focused on career transitions for the next several weeks. Of course, if you're super curious, we've also got some of the articles out on our newsletter. Do follow us. We have over 50,000 followers on our LinkedIn newsletter. Read up what we're saying about our own experiences with career transitions. And it just so happens that both me and my co-founder, Papi, have made several career transitions in our own journeys. We also are bringing on people who are experts in this field. And in our last LinkedIn Live, we had a conversation on what does it mean to really be a job applicant in today's market? What does that mean? How do we understand the technology behind hiring? How do we make an intelligent use of some of that technology? And in today's conversation, we're going to be focused on the passion economy. And I have with me, actually, I would imagine perhaps one of the best people to speak about it, Utkarsh Amitabh. Now, Utkarsh himself has had an extremely interesting career, and we're going to dive into that in just a moment. But let me just welcome Utkarsh. Hi, Utkarsh. So he's just slipped off, and I'm sure he'll be back in a moment or so. Utkarsh's own career journey has been extremely interesting. He's going to speak about that a little bit. There you are, Utkarsh. Hi. I think I can't hear you. Can you say something again?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
That's perfect. So I'm so happy to host you today, Utkarsh. I mean, I've read your book on the passion economy. It's so interesting. I've taken a look at your own career journey, and you seem to be following so much of what you speak about. And there's this super interesting space to be where you've had an unusual career journey yourself. You've been so many things, and I'm going to wait for you to talk about it in more detail. But you're an author, you're a writer, you're a global shaper at the World Economic Forum. You're an entrepreneur, and you've been, leading the marketing function for Fiverr, but also before that, being director of business development for Microsoft. So it's just such an interesting career journey. And of course, now you write about that, and you write both about the passion economy as well as what it means to be an entrepreneur. So super excited. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's entirely my pleasure. I really admire what you and your co-founder are building, and talking about career transitions and thinking about life as multiple pieces that need to be put together like a puzzle with a sense of adventure and possibility is something that made me start Network Capital and eventually write about it. And I think through this discussion and through my other work, I try to make sure that people understand that career transitions are a very normal part of life, and it should not be treated as something to be done once in a lifetime or once a year, or if there's no frequency for it. People need to decide, and we'll talk more about it.
Yeah. Utkarsh, I'm just going to make a request. Your audio is slightly soft. Do you think you can come closer to a mic? just to make it easier for all our listeners there. We have several people who joined in. So thank you so much. Utkarsh, I'm going to start with your own career journey. In a fairly short span, you've frankly done so much, right from Teach for India to your work with Microsoft, to being selected as a Chevening Fellow at Oxford, and then being a global shaper at Davos, World Economic Forum, an angel investor yourself, author. You've written 2 books. You've published in HBR, and the CEO of Network Capital. So can you speak a little bit about your own journey and how you've managed this portfolio of careers, and how you've made some of these very interesting transitions? I mean, some of these are not linear at all. So
Yeah.
I'm personally very curious how you've done this.
So let me just talk through the front of the CV and the back side of the CV, and that will probably make it more interesting for people. So the front of the CV is this. Education-wise, I did mechanical engineering, then liberal arts at a university called Ashoka as part of the founding cohort of the Young India Fellowship. There, I was really um, immersed in trying to connect the dots of math and engineering with philosophy, um, politics, economics, and so forth. And immediately after that, at the age of 24, I decided to go for an MBA, and I was very sure I wanted to do it at a top business school abroad. So I got into INSEAD, and I decided to go and spend a magical year there. And I studied a bit more. I got the Shivning Fellowship at Oxford, and then another degree in moral philosophy and practical ethics, again at Oxford. Work-wise, I did Teach for India, and then spent 7 years working at Microsoft, getting very strong experience in business development, M&A, and other kinds of activities at the intersection of public and private sector. And then started working on a hobby on nights and weekends, which was just to mentor or share career transition tips to anyone who could benefit from it. And that it became a slightly larger movement. And that made me think maybe there is a large business that could be made to enhance the impact of it. So I started Network Capital, and we got our initial funding from Facebook through their Community Accelerator program. And 1 year after that, a blockchain unicorn acquired a stake in Network Capital, and I became the chief marketing officer and acquired a stake in the company. And the reason I told both education and work and my hobbies in one sentence without too many transitions is because, in my eyes, education, work, and play are not distinct aspects of life. For me, studying moral philosophy at Oxford was something that I always wanted to do. But I wanted to do it when I had something to bring to the table, right? When I had actually worked for a while, and I had still gone through several adventures. I had done well in my professional life. I had, I felt that a degree at this time would be sufficiently challenging because I'm not a philosopher by training. My training is as a mechanical engineer, but it will also help me ground and think about the world from first principles. So purely out of interest, I did it, and it has been super helpful. Now I'm in the process of trying to carve out a book on philosophy for teenagers and young
Oh,
adults.
nice.
So whatever I do, there are usually two or three dots that connect it to work, and two or three dots that connect it further to things that pique my interest. And it's been an adventurous ride. It hasn't been an easy ride, though. I would be lying if I said that my 20s leading up to now that I'm in my early 30s, they have been a breeze. They haven't, but it's been one hell of an adventure.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. Utkarsh, but before we continue speaking about, your own very, very interesting career, is there something we can do with the audio? Because it's still a little soft, and I can see in a couple of comments that our
Oh,
listeners
really?
are having a challenge.
Maybe I
So,
should just take
I
off
mean,
my
maybe
hair.
AirPods,
You're
yeah,
just
yeah.
using an AirPod. I can just take that off. Okay. Yes. Hopefully
So,
it's
yeah,
better now.
it is much better. Thank you so much
Okay.
for that. So let me ask you, Utkarsh, when you were starting out, your own career, I know you mentioned that you were a Young India Fellow at Ashoka University uh, when your career started. Did you know ahead of time that you were going to, carve out such a interesting career portfolio for yourself, or is this just something that happened one step at a time? How? What was your thinking on this?
Imagination is a very powerful force. So one of the first classes that I took at the fellowship, my professor at the time, Dwight Jaggard, he asked us all to write, a vision statement and a mission statement for 10 years. Like, what do you really want to be 10 years from now? And I had written about, basically imagined what my life would be personally, professionally, what I saw myself doing. And I recently, it's been about 10 years since I completed the fellowship, and I was going through my vision. And it's very surprising, but a lot of what I wrote there seems to have come true. And most of my life, I have been imagining and living in a dream world. Although some people could think that I'm fairly practical. That's not true. I am and always will be a dreamer. It's just that once you dream, I think you give an anchor to your actions. And I'm somebody who can push his body and mind quite a bit. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and imagination led me here. And I don't want to come across as a massive success story or anything of that sort. I've lived my life on my terms, and I have pretty much everything that I craved for. So it's not a comparison with anyone. I've tried to build my category of one, which I encourage all young professionals and senior executives to try and do. And if you're comfortable with that, I think you will end up having a meaningful life. And if you're having a meaningful life and you uh, put in the effort in building your skills, building your network, and expanding your luck surface area, over time it's very difficult to prevail over somebody who does that consistently.
Wow. There's lots to dive deeper into, Utkarsh. So I know you're someone who's obviously extremely passionate about the work that you do. Network Capital started out as an area of interest that finally then became an organization.
Yeah.
And I know that besides your work career, you mentioned in our pre-interview that you're also fond of, you have other hobbies which are quite serious. So you're an actor.
Yeah.
Uh, so I want to understand how your interest in the passion economy developed. What is it that drew you to the passion economy? I've read your book, by the way, loved it. Would love to understand your own, ideas around why you think that that's the way forward for many people.
Yeah, you know, through Network Capital, I get to speak with lots of people across age groups. And when I speak to many of them, they have this latent regret that they didn't really do what they wanted to do. And it's not about success or failure, because the same conversations I've had with very successful people on paper, and less successful ones. And I feel that a life of regret is probably not the most optimum life. There is a way to deal with regret, and one way to not have too much regret is to try. And my firm belief is that if you try and fail, you will regret it less than if you don't try and fail. So I'm somebody who doesn't mind making a fool of himself. So when I got on my first acting assignment, at that time, surprisingly, you may not believe it, but I used to be a shy person. Anybody who knows me today would not believe that. But at that time, I used to be shy, and I remember standing in at the India Habitat Center where the audition was, and there were a bunch of actors chatting, and I've written it in one of my HBR articles about that particular what happened, and I just could not utter a word. Like, I just could not. I had no idea what to tell these fine people next to me, enjoying the glory of these Shakespeare lines. Um, and that moment is etched in my it's etched in my memory, because I wanted to say, I felt I wanted to add on to that discussion, but I just didn't know what. I was uh, I was stuck in the thought of what's the perfect sentence I should utter right now, and I didn't find that perfect sentence, so I kept quiet. Probably not what I should have done, but that moment of regret, when I would have been 15, 16 at that time, has served me really well. So I just made the decision. It's okay if you think that I have to say something um, less Enlightened, I'm okay with that, but I'll try.
Thanks for sharing such a personal moment. And since you did, I'm going to do, for all our listeners, see, when I started the Future of Work show, and, we've had amazing guests like yourself, and we've had quite an audience for this show. But I postponed the first episode for 6 months. I would think I'm going to go live, and at the last minute, I wouldn't because I couldn't do it. I thought it was just so scary to go on live in front of, don't know who's going to be watching, but in front of whoever would be watching. So it was 6 months. And the reason why this show took a talk show sort of format was because I thought if I've invited a guest, I'm not going to back out. So,
No,
that
thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I think what happens is that once something does well, even we ourselves forget that we didn't start out here. We started out with very different things. And for all those who are listening and watching us, it's really true. The first time we do anything, we're usually pretty bad at it.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to pass through that journey of being bad at something and stay on with it because for whatever reason it means something that helps us go there. But I'm going to go back to what you were saying with Pesh. Tell me about the passion economy. I mean, how did you develop an interest in the passion economy, and what is it for those of
Yeah.
maybe we
So
cross
passion
the
comes
terms
from the Latin word suffering, and that's something that popular culture forgets. That when we say we're passionate about something, essentially it comes down to mean that we are willing to suffer for it. Look, I I was willing to suffer to become a better theater person, a better actor. I was willing to suffer to become a progressively better writer. I'm willing to suffer to run network capital as a serious side hobby, side hustle while I was at Microsoft. And I hustle now to run two companies practically. The stake after the stake acquisition of the blockchain unicorn, I also very very closely involved in running and scaling it, and this is so again because I'm passionate about living my life on my own terms. What I can't say is that I want absolute freedom to do whatever I feel like doing, not accountable to anyone. I I want to have fun all the time, and I'm not necessarily willing to suffer for it. I I've had many weeks because I also teach at a business school in Oxford. So it's a busy life, but I am willing to suffer for it happily. It's worth it.
So tell me more about like why you wrote the book on passion economy. What got you interested in this as a career pathway for so many people?
Yeah,
Why
well, I
do
was
you
telling you
think it's the future?
that many people just live a life filled with regrets that they couldn't be with the person they wanted to be. They couldn't do the work they wanted to do. They didn't quit at the right time. They didn't persist much longer. And while I can't solve all life regrets for people, I can build a ecosystem filled with the sharpest professionals, the most precise content, and a loving, thriving ecosystem that can help people experiment and do whatever they want to do with their lives. So I talk about work and passion in a very playful way, also to make sure that anybody who ever listens to me realize that it's not what you call uh, it's not that painful as long as you're enjoying the pursuit. So when you see hundreds and thousands of people around you trying to minimize their professional regrets, that eventually creates condition for people to listen to their inner calling and try and follow, the popular word passion. What passion doesn't come from is reading Instagram posts or looking at your friends' wonderful holiday pictures in Switzerland, or looking at, a 5 bullet Sunday describing ways to get. Those are things that can give you inspiration, but ultimately it has to be found within, and the resources and the content and communication can help you figure that out. And that's precisely why I decided to join you for this discussion. I thought that whoever's listening is probably curious about reducing regrets from their professional life, and if my story in any shape or form can help, why not?
So, Utkarsh, I'm going to push you a little bit on this. I got the part of regrets and, that
Right.
being a personal mission. But what about the economic factors that are allowing for the growth of, the
Yeah.
fashion economy? I'd love to hear from you your thoughts around why that's a viable career option, because what you're saying about regrets is perhaps held true through history. But now
Yeah.
we're at a time where, it's far more perhaps within reach
Yeah.
of many people to be financially independent while following a
Yeah.
passion. So, can you speak a little bit about the economic factors and perhaps technology factors that have enabled this big shift?
Yeah. Look, I when I quit Microsoft, it was September 2020. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and I had to undertake several big life decisions, personal and professional. Moved countries. I now live in London, and in that particular, 1 year since leaving and starting, I was able to, build a life, buy a house, start afresh, and have a pretty thriving economic life as well. All started with, the curiosity of what can happen when people really do what they care about with full force. You can't half-ass in the passion economy. If you go in, you have to go all in. And I did, along with my community, and so far it served me well. It's quite possible that it did not work out, or somebody tries and it doesn't work out. So what? In life, you get many shots. You don't need to get every shot right. As long as you keep trying, you get a few shots right. You're bound to succeed. This is roughly what Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger say in their investment strategy. Get 5 decisions right out of. Think of life as 20 big decisions you have to take. Even if you get 5 of them right, you're likely to be successful. Now, uh, Warren Buffett never actually said it, but somebody quoted him saying it and he laughed. He said that I didn't say it, but whoever said it, it's smart advice. I endorse it. So here I am paraphrasing Warren Buffett's paraphrased ideology. So yeah, it can work out, and technology does help, right? In the book I talk about thousand true fans, a concept that Kevin Kelly came up with, and it has been instrumental in my life and that of several other people in this space. I run 2 platforms. One is a platform for career transition. Another is a platform that's an internet infrastructure platform. The company that acquired a stake in the company in Network Capital. This is not exactly what you call like a creator platform. I'm not running a YouTube channel per se or newsletter, although these are parts of our entire stack. So the idea was always to start, acquire 1,000 true fans, and then go into building an ecosystem and a platform. But that was always my idea because, of my business training, I knew that's where the direction that I wanted to take it. But there are other people who've made millions of dollars just running a thriving podcast or a YouTube channel or a newsletter or hosting dinners that they really care about, or a philosopher who I had a conversation with on Network Capital, who now takes philosophy to the marketplace by creating really interesting courses on philosophy and the corporate world. So there are lots of people who've undertaken this transition, and it does work out economically as long as you're able to do it for long enough and find 1,000 true fans. And I define 1,000 true fans are people who not just like what you do, but they are people who will show up when you need it, when you're launching your book, when you're just in trouble, or when you need somebody to, when say there's some random controversy, you need, these people to speak out about, what kind of a person you are and so forth. And this happens to anyone who acquires any bit of fame or power in the online world or the offline world. People will try and randomly come up with conspiracy theories about you. It happens with everyone who is worth anything. And that's when your 1,000 true fans show up. And the good thing about 1,000 true fans is because their love also translates to dollars. So if you really know how to build and create 1,000 people who truly care for you, and they're giving you a small chunk or perhaps enough of a couple of cups of Starbucks a month, that translates to a pretty reasonable income, some might say. So let's say anyone has 1,000 true fans, and these 1,000 true fans, pay say $10, which is I think two Starbucks a month worth for their services. That's roughly, in the Indian context, considered a very, very, very high income. And this 1,000 true fans is not just reserved for people who have exceptional educational degrees or professional background. This is something that anyone with a curiosity in pretty much anything can do. That's the beauty of the internet. It allows niches to scale. So your niche could be poetry, it could be philosophy, it could be, a Bihari food, it could be quite literally anything, as long as you're able to suffer till you get 1,000 true fans and you're able to maintain them. The myth of the internet is that popularity leads to money. It doesn't. It can help a little in the start, but there's a difference between being sort of liked by 10,000, 100,000, a million people and absolutely loved and cherished by 1,000. And I think being loved and cherished by 1,000 is a lot smarter than trying to get internet fame by doing random things.
I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this, Utkarsh. I know you speak about this in your book as well, the importance of 1,000 true fans and how you did this for Network Capital
Yeah.
on a Facebook community. So for all our listeners who are curious about how does one even start building a
Yeah.
community of 1,000 fans, what would be some of the ideas that you found personally are really effective?
Yeah. Look, so I started the minimum viable product of Network Capital was very much a Facebook group, and there are multiple reasons for it. And for me, it was the right thing to start with. At that time, Facebook was very popular. It had the best software or best product for the groups. And I used to work at Microsoft that time, so I had a very clear, close idea of what the product of LinkedIn looked like. It was at the time not comparable in terms of management of groups. And then there were many standalone platforms that had to be created. But I didn't have a time. I had a really busy job at Microsoft. Many times I would be pulled into projects directly with the CEO, like a remarkable person called Satya Nadella. Like I got a wonderful opportunity to work with him on a few projects like building the smart village, really scaling up public-private partnerships. And that is, the working with those kinds of professionals also, just to answer your previous question, really reinforced the fact that I must, do what I truly care about at Microsoft and beyond. But again, back to this one. I didn't have much time. Facebook was where my minimum viable product was gaining traction. And it started growing really fast. And the talent density of the people coming was high. And what I did was I said that I'm not going to try and involve everyone. I'm going to spend nothing on marketing or sales. What I'm going to do is to keep everything that ever comes out of Network Capital quality wise, whether it's writing or people or the kind of support that is offered, very holistic and like top notch. And people found it, and I think still find it, as one of the smartest places to be on the internet. Like being on Network Capital and being part of the Network Capital community is probably, I'm biased, but probably the smartest place to be because there's no junk, no advertisement. The people who teach and share the content are people who are among the absolute best. And it is need blind, which means that if you can't afford it, we have an endowment fund to, to put in the money. So I think that started scaling, and because my idea was always to make it into a platform and make sure that it scales the way a platform does, and it has continued to do so. There have been a lot of troubles in edtech in India for a variety of reasons, and one of them has been that a lot of edtech became test preparing for different examinations. People started doing lots of gimmicky things like spending way too much on advertisements and all of that. We never did that. For me, profitability and impact were the two things that mattered when I started, and they're the two things that matter now. And profitability is important in order to have the impact. Because I don't want to spend any of my time trying to raise, do non-core activities.
Thanks for sharing that. I really like the fact that you spoke about spoke about this right now. You speak about it in your book as well. The importance of the 1,000 true fans, and from what I hear you saying, in your case, it was about quality content and having
Quality
really
content from our side and
oh,
quality
yes,
content peer to peer, and
correct,
then
smart
the
people
network
in.
that we started to build. So think of network capital's idea then and now in multiple layers. So the base layer is people, that's the infrastructure. On top of that is people generated content, which is very high quality. People generated content creates conditions for personalized mentorship because you can study that and analyze what people are talking about to figure out what people will be talking about in the coming months. What are the common areas they need support? For example, I know your daughter is my junior at Ashoka, and she might, like say, she studied economics. There is a fairly straightforward set of questions that many people have, who would say have done an undergrad at the time. You can cluster them, and those kinds of questions can eventually be automated. There is enough infrastructure in the form of content, one-on-one mentorship, and then for the last mile activities, suppose there's something very particular, there's a whole tribe of people available to have a conversation. So it's technology, people, and then making sure that content is a way to sum it all up.
Wow, that really makes a lot of sense. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just ask a tactical question. How did you get people to share personalized stories on the community board? Like, is there something that you found worked really well?
It's I think I'm reasonably persuasive when I speak and write, so that helps. So I started talking about the idea of network capital when it was an idea, sometime even at Davos. So I went there. Somebody on the channel asked me at NDTV, I think, in the freezing Alps, that what is this network capital that you're building? And it was just like quite literally 6, 8 months old, but it had started to show promise. There were lots of interesting stories coming, and I shared whatever I thought about it, the vision of it on NDTV, and I've been doing that at whatever platforms I got. And once you get to a certain, what you call, product market community people fit, then you can shift to other things. So I'm not sure if this is advice or not, but like, I'm somebody who believes in, like, sharing the vision as persuasively as possible. And I found that once you share your curiosity with whatever that is, people tend to resonate with it. And I've had no problems on that front, thankfully.
Thanks, Utkarsh. I mean, I can tell you that I'm learning. I'm learning just from that. We're also working on understanding what will enable better career transitions for people.
Yeah.
And actually, that's going to be my next question before I take an audience question. Thank you for the so many people who've written in our comments. Hello, very happy you're here. But I'm going to take a question from Sajir Zeji. Thank you for this question. How might the widespread embrace of the passion economy and the side hustle revolution reshape not only the nature of work, but also our societal values, economic structures, and individual well being in the coming decade? What's your take on that?
Okay. Let me give you the pessimistic take and the optimistic take, because both are true. The pessimistic take is that it's very difficult to make side hustles possible, and sometimes pursuing too many side hustles can lead to a slight sense of burnout or a fatigue, a sense of malaise. And not everyone needs to do a side hustle, although I think everyone should. So it can be stressful because sometimes finding, something that you want to dedicate your nights and weekends to won't be possible, perhaps due because of your duties to your family, or perhaps due to other conditions. So I don't think people should be bullied into having a side hustle. For me, side hustle has been a tool of a discovery. Studying moral philosophy, I could have read a book on moral philosophy. I decided to get a degree, an advanced one, at Oxford, which is considered the best place to, in the world for philosophy. It's hard. Like after I hang up, before I head to the next meeting, I'll be carrying a stack of thick papers of extremely dense uh, conversations about something called love drugs, which basically means that if you enhance somebody's quote unquote love with the help of personalized chemicals, is it still love? The ethics of all of that. It's a very indirect reference, if at all, to the work that I do, but it's important to me. So the future is that most people, slightly pessimistic one, would be quasi bullied into having a side hustle because everyone around them seems to. And I think it would be the less optimum way forward. The more uh, optimistic side of me thinks that everyone or most people will choose to have side hustles as a way to discover their next job. Then they will try and do their side hustles seriously to see whether they can find their thousand true fans or not. And if they're able to find their thousand true fans, and if they're able to, make enough money to survive, whatever that might be, for somebody it could be $10,000, somebody could be $1 million. That you decide. Nobody else should. Um, then that would lead to a structured career transition. So the moral of the story is that I want side hustles to become the way people discover their next job. And this whole very romantic idea of following your passion based on a whim, like you woke up one day and you decided that from tomorrow I will write poetry for a living. You could do that. I know for a fact that there are, a small number of people for whom that's the right way. But having built and run one of the world's largest mentorship platforms, I know for a fact that that's not true for almost all of us. So, what should become the norm is what's true for almost everybody. And this side hustle, experimentative way of discovering your next job is probably the most suitable way for you and I.
Now, that's a direct segue actually into what's going to be my next question, which is what advice would you give someone who's already in a full time job and is considering a career transition, perhaps to become a creator or an influencer, as you speak about in your book? And you speak about the side hustle as one route to discover the niche perhaps that's going to work. And we already have a question asking, so how do you focus and put all your energy in the side hustle when you have a full-time job, probably family commitments and everything else going on? um, so what practical tips do you have for someone in a full-time job with a family, um, on making a move towards the passion economy?
I would say scale down. In today's context, we talk a lot about scaling up. How do we go from 1,000 true fans to 100,000 true fans, or 1 million fans? There are popular talks about multi-million dollar acquisitions, $1 billion valuations, and so forth. And it can be really confusing and unsettling to decide what you want to do based on news. It comes down to, it basically amounts to driving drunk.
Yeah.
If you decide your career strategy based on what you read on the internet, particularly social media platforms, that's as good as driving drunk and seeing. The first result, I mean, I know for a fact that if people look at my social media long enough, it will probably not be just pleasant. There could be some sense of latent envy in some people. So, moral of the story is don't decide your career strategy based on my Instagram profile, because everyone's Instagram profile is a slightly more glamorized version of what's going on. But it's easier said than done. Envy is a very potent force that shapes. It's one of the seven deadly sins for a reason. So, scaling down means that I don't necessarily need to be the next Shalini or next, any person. I'm going to be the first me in that division. And I'm not going to try and conquer the world. I'm going to try and conquer 20 words. Let's say you're trying to become a writer. And if you consistently, after a really busy job, are able to write 20 words consistently, that's actually not bad at all. Those 20 words eventually scale. My brother has an exceptionally busy job at a large financial organization. and he recently started his MBA at Chicago Booth. Um, Producing music, which is his passion, always was difficult, but he manages to find time for it. So there are three things that you should know. One is that if something is a priority, you will find time for it. If you consistently don't find time for it, that means it's not really a priority, and you should be okay with that. The second thing is that don't decide your career strategy based on outward factors. Scale down, look within, and pick a few things that you truly care about. Just do the 20 word, 20, 20x. Just a little bit consistently will work your way. And third is that look at data. If you feel horrible doing your side hustle, don't do it. Right? I find studying moral philosophy difficult, but I love it. There's a difference. Finding it difficult, and you're writing papers, academic papers on that could be difficult, but as long as you love it, that's fine. But if you find it difficult and you hate it, why should that be a side hustle? Remove it.
I love what you're saying, Utkarsh. I like the idea of, you know, doing a side hustle in a way that you can be consistent and enjoy it. And, even if it's bite size, whatever that bite is that you can be consistent about. I love the idea of let it be you, just you finding, your
Yeah,
space. And, it sounds like there's an element of personal exploration, that's baked into this idea. Um, I do really like the idea of thinking back to whether you're enjoying this, because if you're not enjoying this, then that's a clear signal that
yeah.
this is perhaps not your thing. So really very practical advice there. In your book you spek of this, that you don't suggest that people leave a corporate job that's working, for them full time, and then immediately make this shift to becoming a creator or an influencer. Can you speak a little bit about, what's your thinking behind that?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So, okay, I do want to talk about this. Look, I have some influence, yes. And what I write is reasonably popular, but I am absolutely not an influencer or anything of that sort. Having influence through your work is different from making influence your work. And I think both of them have merits, but you should be okay with that. I would much rather be known as a philosopher, entrepreneur, investor who studied from engineering to moral philosophy, everything, rather than somebody who gives advice for a living. I don't give advice for a living. People come to me because of the ecosystem that I've built, me, meaning my company. And that's because I want to be known for that. However, a creator or an influencer, they could be wanting to known for the products they build, or the Etsy shops they create, or for the channel that or the newsletter they run. And all models are okay. You should be comfortable with that, right? So this particular step should be. It's very important, and people often miss it. And second is that, look, during the pandemic, there was so much noise about so many organizations, so many ways of living. This is the new way to live. This is permanent. And almost all of the theories have been proven wrong. Most of the startups that made most noise during the pandemic don't exist today. And that should tell you something, that people get excited and nervous too fast. And if you really want to make it in the new internet-propelled world, where things are changing rapidly, politically, socially, economically, and so forth, you got to play the slow game, slow but consistent, as a person with influence, or an influencer, or a creator, or somebody who's basically trying to create a job or a life on their terms is okay. And I'll give you, the most beautiful way it manifests. Yesterday, I took my mum, who's visiting Oxford, to receive a prize and give a lecture to my college, and I was showing her around. I had to take some calls on my way there, wake up a little early, and so on and so forth. But the very fact that I could weave in that day and make it possible is one of the best days of my life. That, to me, is the definition of freedom. To build a work life, which gives you autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and freedom to spend and share it with the people you love on your terms. That is the whole point of having an influence or creation or anything of that sort. So look for your invisible audience. People who you want to make most proud of, and whatever uh, life that you want to lead, and be prepared for some adventure and some misadventure, right? Because I said, and I talk about quite frequently, um, most of the online world is filled with advice or tips of things that have worked, or people use their failures as marketing strategy. Oh, look how much I've suffered, and the pity porn. And I think it's just like so disingenuous. For if you really want to share it, by all means, and not everything shared online, the rags to riches stories need to be looked at pity point, but some is. It's cringe-worthy content that is like repeatedly shared over and over again. Um, what is I personally have no warmth for that kind of content, but I think I have a lot of love for people who share whatever's going on with the idea of helping their invisible audience, being true to their invisible audience, because your invisible audience, the people you think about when they are not in the room, are essentially why you're alive, why you work. That's something that people should keep in their mind while they build their side hustles, they decide their career strategy, and they should absolutely be willing to fail quite a few times. And there is nothing glorious or beautiful or profound or heroic in it. It's just a data point. Accept it, move on to the next one.
So interesting that you call it just a data point.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting way to look at it. So I'm going to take a couple of comments again from Sajir. How could it be that individuals effectively navigate the intricate balance between a demanding full-time job and the pursuit of the side hustle, while addressing the frustrations, team conflicts, and complexities of selecting the right platforms for optimal success in the ever evolving digital landscape? So, I mean, it makes sense that you may even decide that you have an area you're curious about, as you say, or passionate about. But then there's a lot that goes into, selecting the right platform, understanding how to influence that platform so that you manage to grow your 1,000 true fans. So, isn't that a lot for an average person? Are there some ways that people can look at it that make their lives easier?
Look, Shani, I don't think there's anyone who's average as a person, right? I think people are forced to become average because of suboptimum choices. I could have been a very average person. Let's say I decided to build a career at, I don't know, let's say a cement company, right? I find it like a cement is a very important thing, but I personally don't care much about it. So I, by definition, cannot necessarily do life changing work there, right? So the institutions and networks that we are part of can sometimes make us average. And that's how people learn the wrong lesson that they are average. But there's nothing average about a human being. Intelligence is basically a discovery challenge, right? So instead of trying to look at it as a game where the rules are set and you have to play, and the person who comes first is very good, and the person who comes 50th is probably average, and the person who comes 100 is the last. That might be useful in say a village in Uttar Pradesh taking a board examination, but that's so far off from what life is. Life is a game where you set the rules, you play by yourself, you build a tribe, and you pursue a mission. Um, the 7 billion people, 7.5 billion people on the earth, none of them is what I would say average. They're made average because they're forced into situations that they have no product market community person fit with. So it might take effort, it may not be pleasant, but if you go on and discover your superpower, I think you could, rest on your grave saying that I tried. It was tiring but adventurous.
Lovely. That's so inspiring, Utkarsh. That's really so inspiring. And with that, just my final question. You speak in your book about how the idea of the category of one influenced you. How does that connect with the passion economy? There seems to be a strong connection. How would you describe that?
Yeah. Shalini, the challenge is that it's difficult to be average today. Just on your previous question, right? If you're a middling person in whatever you're doing, the market forces are such that it will tend not to reward you fairly. And it's evident in a lot of policy debates that happen about, say, basic income or, minimum pay and so forth, because the market is structured in such a way that it wants to really, really reward exceptional players. So it's difficult being average. So it's in your interest to do things that you have a chance to do exceptionally well. And the way you build your category one is by looking at combining a few strands of thoughts or fields where you can combine them and look at a market need, your own skills and interests, and figure out that unique sweet spot. Just because, say, data engineering seems to be a job that, say, OpenAI is paying $900,000 for, there is no guarantee that you would be the data engineer that will be able to get that job. All that will lead to is a polite dinner conversations. Did you know OpenAI is offering 900,000 for a for particular data engineer? So what? If you care about it, I mean, and you can become one of the best data engineers, by all means, build that company, do that job. But if that's not the case, feeling compelled to do data engineering just because somebody else is offering a high pay is again a recipe for failure. What people should actually do is to look at things that genuinely pique their interest, but also look at the market. Right? That's why I talk about the 1,000 true fans. If you can't get 1,000 people to pay for what you built, that's a data point telling you that this is not quite right just yet. So build your category of one uh, in and around areas that you're curious about, which is loosely called passion. And if you're willing to be passionate about it for long enough, in other words, suffer with it for long enough, you will be able to find 1,000 true fans. And once you do, you will have a reasonable amount of economic freedom, which essentially gives you the opportunity to experiment more, try more on your terms, and build the kind of life that your invisible audience and you can be proud of.
Love that, Utkarsh. Love that. I'm going to take a comment from Neha Parashar. Hi, Neha. Thank you for joining us. It's pretty straightforward to gauge success in a linear career, right? Titles, position, responsibility. Gauging success in non-linear careers, when one is dabbling in multiple things, is far more difficult and makes people want to choose markers of success like fame, even if false, or just economic success. So, any thoughts or suggestions for people wanting to be seen as successful? Does public success become even more important in non-linear careers? That's a pretty interesting question,
That's a
Neha.
really interesting question, and I think Neha asked this question. It does. I try to answer somewhat when I said the difference between having influence or being an influencer or being a creator. So I think you should discuss luck surface area a bit within your own work life, which basically is a product of doing great things and telling lots of people. Now, I've had columns in newspapers like Mint and Express for many years now. Now Harvard Business Review and World Economic Forum. So through all of these platforms, I've tried to evangelize ideas. Many of them took shape, and many of them are popular now. So I'm not going to deny the fact that being consistent about a certain thing and achieving quote unquote fame and influence is not helpful. It is. For example, if you Google deep generalist, one of my articles is the first link. If you Google surprisingly career transition, one of my HBR article is the first link. Same true surprisingly for hard work. So it really helps, work and it gets you new opportunities. But it comes down to luck surface area, right? I put in the same amount of effort in writing these 3, 4 articles as I did in writing the other, say, 50 or 100. But these three seem to have found more quote unquote fame and influence. It's not something that I engineered, it's something that whoever read me found most value in. And that is what it is. Um, what I found writing most interesting was the article on envy, and the one that is coming out right now on the difficulty of being good, which is based on one of my papers at studying modern philosophy at Oxford. But probably they were less popular than that. But to me, they're equally meaningful. So it is unfortunately true that some amount of influence helps. That influence can be created, but you cannot sort of apply a formula. And I really dislike things like tips to make Instagram reels go viral. Those are cringeworthy things. Like that's not network capital. That will never be network capital. We do long form, boring stuff, which will always be relevant. And that's something that I care about, and I have the flexibility to do it. You should look at doing whatever suits you. And in a corporate job, you have what you call the assurance of a title, but I don't think that assurance is going to last too long, because the way people work in big organizations is also going to go through a big change. So you might as well plan for your own redundancy before you have to think about it.
So well said. Both the fact that corporate careers are shifting, and I think they're extremely unlikely to go back to the way linear careers worked a couple of decades ago. And I, really liked your idea, to Neha's point, about maximizing your luck surface so that your influence increases, and then in a sense, your influence becomes one marker of whatever else you're doing. That's the way your ideas are reaching an audience. Thanks, Neha, for that really, really interesting question. So we're at time now, Utkarsh. Before we end, any one or two ideas that you'd like anybody who's considering a career transition into the passion economy to definitely take back?
Number one, no pity porn. If you didn't succeed in whatever you want to do, that's fine. It's just a data point. Move on, try the next thing. But don't sit and dwell on anything for too long. I think failure is just like randomly discussed too much. And I heard of like I was told by a dear friend who's a woman about a conversation she heard in an executive training session, that one of the executives speaking there is that whenever people find women in discussion forums, people start talking about imposter syndrome and maternity leave, and that is really not the only thing that failure, maternity leave, and imposter syndrome are not the only thing that women or anybody else should be trying. The same kind of advice also happens in the passion economy space. People start talking about these three things: that how to find work-life balance, how to, I mean, that let's expand the scope and let's not dwell on the pity point. It's fine to be successful, it's fine to be failure. Let's treat it as a data point. As Bhagavad Gita tells, it really works. Like, let's be objective, let's not be too emotional about what's working, what's not. Do your work and do it consistently and let it be. Second is that your 1,000 true fans matter, and you have to earn them and you have to earn from them, right? In order to support your work. If you can't, look for a different strategy. But without those 1,000 true fans, it will be difficult to move beyond a certain point. And the third is that if you are not having fun for a very long time, you should quit, just like a data point, and do something new. But don't quit on a whim. That's always a bad idea. Create an exit strategy, give yourself a few months, and move on.
Love that, Utkarsh. I also like the fact that both are data points. The failure part you've spoken about a few times, but also not enjoying something, that's a data point. And yet it's not enjoying something just today. It's over a period of time. So give it time. I'm taking away many ideas from our conversation here, for myself as well. I love your focus on, using that side hustle as a discovery place, building a community around your curiosity, and building a community in a way that, whatever are the standards you've set for yourself, you're able to do that consistently. You've applied that 1,000 true fans principle in your own work, and I think it's a principle that makes a lot of sense, particularly for this kind of work, the passion economy kind of work, as a marker for whether you've got it right as yet. It's like, in a sense, almost your product market fit. Have you got it right as yet? What else do you need to do to get it right? The importance of having people who are not just who like your work, but who really care about what you're saying in the long term. Loved that idea. Loved the idea of the category of one, and your side hustle or your experience in the passion economy, in some sense, being this, you know, sounds almost mythical, but this combination of what is it that you really enjoy, what is it you're good at, what is it that the market wants, and what is it that they'll pay you for, and you're just finding that that right combination of it all. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think you've shared many ideas that many of our audience, as well as me, will be taking back into the work that we do. Thank you.
I think you do a very important work, Shalini, by making these conversations possible. Thanks very much. I truly enjoyed it and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. So for all our listeners, do stay tuned for more conversations around career transitions. We are at Uncube really curious about this area ourselves, and both through our own experience and the work we do for many large Indian organizations on how careers are evolving. So if you're curious about it, subscribe to our newsletter called Eyeing the Future. Watched our LinkedIn lives with several people who have both made interesting career transitions themselves, or are also writing and studying about this as academics or as people who are researchers. So with that, thank you very much and have a great weekend.